Hey everybody! So today I thought I would show you a little something called React hooks. So if you haven't heard of React hooks, I recommend you learn about them. Sorry, I'm looking for a Chrome window here. Let me pull that over. Oh, not the Chrome window we are looking for. Let's try this one. Here we go. Yeah, so React hooks. If we go to reactjs.org/hooks, you're going to see this introduction to a request for comment. That's an alpha feature in React 16.7, which is not yet released. So all of the stuff that you're looking at might be different when it's actually released, but this is pretty, I think it's pretty solid. And so specifically what I'm going to be talking about is, and I'm actually writing a newsletter at the moment talking about what's going to happen to all my render props, because React hooks are really, really awesome. And the thing that the problem that they solve is component logic reuse, and it solves it really, really well. So I don't know why you'd want to use anything else, because render props were primarily made to solve that problem of component logic reuse, and that's primarily how they're used today. So my blog post today is going to be like, hey, how, like now that we have this new thing, what's going to happen to all the things that I've learned about render props? And so my newsletter today is going to be in part showing you that there are actually still use cases for render props and what those are, but also show you how to refactor a render prop based component to a hook, custom hook instead. So that's what I wanted to live stream this today so that I could kind of talk about that and post or link to this live stream in my newsletter. So without any further ado, let's take a look at our example. So a while back, like a year ago, I made React toggled, which I actually don't use React toggled. It's a toggle component that's render prop based. And the reason that I created this was actually to make a really simple component that implemented all of the patterns that I was using in Downshift to make it easier for people to learn how to use these different patterns that I was teaching people. So because Downshift is like 1,000 lines long, this thing is like 100 lines long, so it's a lot easier to understand. But it still implements a lot of those same features that Downshift does. So with the exception of state reducers, it doesn't implement state reducer, but that's okay. All right, yeah, so as I was going through refactoring this, I came across a few discoveries that I thought were really interesting insights into hooks. So let's go ahead and try things out really quick. I'm gonna pop open this, and I'm actually gonna get rid of this one. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna want to do when you're refactoring to hooks is make sure that you're using a version of React that supports hooks. So I'm at greater than or equal to 15, which is going to get me the latest of 16, excluding any alpha releases. So this actually does not include the alpha release of React that includes hooks. And so yeah, if I want that, I'm going to need to install it in here. So actually, this is where my dependencies are getting installed. That was pure dependencies. But yeah, so React 16.0.7, or sorry, 16.7.0/alpha.2, I think is where we're at right now. I've actually already installed that, so it is in my node modules. I was just in a different branch. Switch back to master. So I'm not going to go and install that, but that's what you will need to do when you start refactoring to hooks. Make sure that you're using a version of React that supports hooks. Yeah. So if we go to our index here, now with that all set up and I've got my tests running, I want to make sure that my tests continue to run after I've and run successfully after I've refactored to hooks. Otherwise, I've not refactored, I have rewritten. And so that's what we're gonna do. The cool thing is that the way that our hooks are going to work is actually pretty simple. So I'm going to make a new function component called toggle. That's going to take props, and then we're going to say use toggle. This is going to be our new toggle component or our toggle hook. We're going to pass those props, those options. We're going to return props.children invoke that, right? So if we look at our render method, this is what basically what we're doing is whatever's in our render method. So our hook doesn't actually render anything, neither did our toggle component because it's a render prop based API. So yeah, we're basically doing the same thing. Now we want to unwrap the array to support preact. So we're going to do unwrap array. That basically is going to say if it's an array, give me the first item. If it's not, then it is the item that I want. So because preact children are always going to be an array. In React, it can be an array, or it might just be the function, which is a little confusing. But yeah, so we're going to do that same thing. Also, I don't want to pass all of the props to my new hook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off children, and then I'll take the rest of these as props. And then we'll just do children, and then we'll pass the props. Cool. Okay, let's see. I don't think there was anything else here. So yeah, what our custom hook is going to do is it's going to return us this get toggler state and helpers. So our custom hook will just return this object, and then we'll call our children function with that object. And so now, providing that this use toggle hook implements all the same features that we had in our original toggle component, our new toggle function, our simple toggle function here, which is going to take care of like hooking everything up into React, this will have the same API as our original render prop did. So we don't have to break everything that's using our render prop based API, but we can create this use toggle hook, and then people can over time refactor their components to use the new use toggle hook rather than the toggle render prop API. This is really important. In addition to that, even if we're like, oh, everybody's going to be moving to hooks anyway, so we don't need to keep this around, I actually am going to keep my render prop based components around, even if it's just in my test file, because it's this is the way that I have decided I want to test my custom hooks, is by creating a render prop based function out of it, and then rendering that render prop based component so that I can test my hooks. I'm pretty happy with that so far with what I've played around with. So we'll see, maybe the future will be different. Okay, cool. So one other thing about this toggle to make it just like this class component is we want these prop types. So I'm going to do toggle.prop types. Sweet. So we get rid of that. These default props, these are actually going to reside in our use toggle. So use toggle is going to accept an object, and it will default these. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to make my function use toggle, and whoops, I lost my place. Use toggle. Okay, so then I'm going to export use toggle down here just so I don't forget, because that is what we want most people to be using. And then this is going to take our options. I'm going to destructure those, and we're going to get our default on, and that'll be false. So that takes care of that default prop. And then our on toggle, and that will be no op. Okay, cool. That takes care of that one. Got rid of those. And so what if somebody's using this use toggle and they don't want to provide those options? Well, in React, even if somebody renders our component without props, we're still going to be getting this object of props. Like even if somebody says toggle, that's still going to give us an object of props. But that is not the case for if somebody in their code says use toggle and just doesn't provide an object. So that's one difference here from what it appears to be something that's similar. You do need to default that to an object. And not all of your hooks are going to take objects. Some of them are going to take arrays, or who knows what they're going to accept. It's all just regular JavaScript. There's no real convention here anyway. So yeah, we're going to just default this to an object. And yeah, that takes care of that. Now let's talk about state. Okay, cool. So okay, so I've got like this big reveal that I'm going to show you here in a little bit, and I'm trying to decide if I should show you now or if I should show you the pane first. I'm going to show you the pane first, and then there will be this like, ah, wow, that was cool. This is what I experienced this morning. So what I'm going to do is our on state is dependent, or is initialized, derived by the default on, but it's also going to be derived by whether or not our on state is controlled. And if you're unfamiliar with the idea of controlled components, then I've got a course for you. You can go to kcd.im advanced react. I'll copy this. I also have a course on front-end masters that you can watch. But yeah, so this will show you all about all these patterns and things. So if there are patterns in this component that you are like totally unfamiliar with and stuff, this course is for you. But yeah, so we've got is uncontrolled. So let's pull up all of these things here first. I'm gonna just pull those two. Bink. We'll put it, oh, not in here, but in here. There's gonna be function get on, and function is uncontrolled. Now, when you're refactoring a class component into a hook, or refactoring a class component to be a function component that uses hooks, anytime you see the word this in that function, get rid of it. That is not what you want. Okay, so in our case, we also, this get on. Yeah, this is not really working, right? Because our on state is going to come from on and set on state, use state, right? So let's pull in use state from React, and we're going to initialize that to our default on, but no, that's going to be initialized to get on. Okay, so we're going to say do get on with default on. Okay. And then we're going to, props now is this argument. We're passing those props. So here we're going to get on so they can pass on as a prop. I'm going to alias this to controlled on. And so is on controlled, that'll be controlled on. If controlled on is not undefined, then we are controlled. And so our on state is actually going to be controlled on. Otherwise, we'll use our internal on state. Okay. Yeah, that works. Okay, sweet. So we've taken care of our state. I'm not totally happy with this. We're going to make some pretty significant changes to this later, but we'll keep on going this way. So then we've got our get toggler props, toggle keys, which actually I don't know why that's a member property. That could just be like totally external, but there it is. We also have get input toggler props, all of these things, all of this stuff, all of this. We'll leave get component will receive props where it is now, but I'm going to take these things. We're just going to move it. Oh, rats. I lost it. Okay. So we're going to move this. There. Nope. There. Okay, cool. So now all of this stuff is inside of our use toggle. And nice. This get toggler state and helpers, this is actually what we want to return from this component. So we're going to make this a function. There we go. And then we need to make this a const declaration. We'll make this one a const. We'll make this a const. Make this a const. And this one. And all these. Whoops. Yeah, King Daro suggested maybe not destructuring this would make things cleaner. Yeah, potentially, but then as he or she also noted, it would also make it harder to assign default values. Never fear, things are going to get cleaned up considerably here in a little bit. But yeah, there are trade-offs, and I know, like I said, I'm not super happy with what we've come up with so far. So we're gonna get to a better state, I promise. Okay, so then I'm going to come down here and we'll just return. Okay, so that's what we want to return. Now we got to get rid of all of this, all of these thises. So pretty much I think we can get a pretty long ways just by going list dot all over the place and getting rid of that stuff, because these are all local to our component now. And for all of these, we can just do null. Okay, cool. Now this one, set state, set on state. And then we'll just set the state here rather than an object. That set on state, we're getting it's already defined. Oh, right. So here's the thing. Okay, now it's going to be a bit of the change in how we're going to do things. Well, here, let me actually fix all these. Use objects or more terse object syntax. And it's also complaining because it's used before defined. That's a dumb rule. So I'm going to use int. What is the rule called? No use before define. No use before define. Turn that thing off. That's kind of annoying. Okay, so now we've got a bunch of broken stuff because we have duplicate declarations and stuff. But here's the deal. So before we had the set on state where anytime we wanted to change the state, we would determine whether or not the on state is actually changing, and if it is, then or if it's not, then we don't need to call any on toggle handler, which is what we're doing here. If it is changing, then we want to notify the parent that, hey, the toggle state has changed. It's like an on-change prop for an input. So after considering this a little bit, I realized that, well, here, let me take a step back. Yeah, so I guess, shoot, now I can't like formulate what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep on talking and refactoring things, and maybe hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So what I'm going to do, we'll keep this as it is right now, but we're going to rename the set on state up here to set internal on state, just so we don't have that name collision. Okay, and yeah, let's get rid of our toggle here. I'm going to just comment it out for now because I want to keep that component will receive props. And we can talk about that in a little bit. So let's see our tests here. What is going on? I'm guessing these are all the same problem. On is not defined. Oh, okay. Well, that would be a problem. On is not defined. What line? What in the tarnation? On is not defined. ESLint should be catching that for me. I am quite confused about this. All right, so I'm gonna just change things considerably now, because I can't remember where my train of thought as I was doing this earlier. I can't remember how I got to where I was, where I finally ended up. So there are two things. The on toggle prop. I remember mentioning the on toggle prop to somebody. Actually, it was to Sophie from the React team. And she was like, yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a prompt that you use to let people know when things have changed, particularly if I can control that value. So I'm either going to just use this component and it's going to manage its state internally, or I'm going to pass it its state. And if I'm passing it its state, then it should just like, I know what its state is going to be, and I know what it's when it's changing. If I'm just using it, then I don't need to know. And so that sort of makes sense, except like for a toggle component, it's like an input component. I want to have an on change. So I do want to have some mechanism for knowing when that state is being updated. I'm not saying this quite right. Let's ignore that for a second. So the other piece of this is this controlled state. Like, so in React and render props, with the way we did things, shared code before with React components, having controlled state made a lot of sense. But with a custom hook controlled state, I was trying to think, how do we apply this concept to a world of hooks? And what I came to realize was, here we're allowing people to pass a prompt called on, but we're not allowing the reason that we needed an on toggle prop in that scenario was so that we'd be notified when, hey, I think that you should update the on state. And like we can do that a lot simpler in this way that I'm about to show you. So let's try this. What I'm going to do might blow your mind for a second. So we're going to say on use state. And I'm going to do equals use state default on. Okay. Then I'm going to say on equals on use state at 0. And set on state is on use state at 1. And I'm going to get rid of this and that and that and that and that and that and that and that. And then instead of get on, we're just going to reference on. And we can get rid of this. And instead of all of this stuff with callbacks and nonsense, we're going to get rid of that entirely. And I'm just going to make this like all this bind stuff. I don't think that's all that simple. So we're going to say just set on state. And this is going to be not on. And then we can get rid of on toggle. And nope. Okay, so how is this working? Well, is it working? That's the big question. Oh snap. Look at all those passing tests. So there are a couple. We're going to talk about these. This one is actually very interesting, so we'll talk about that. What's going on there, why that one's failing. But let's talk about how this works. So if you are not super experienced with destructuring and how default values work with destructuring, then this might be kind of confusing. But one of the coolest features of destructuring is the ability to use previous values as a default for the following values. This also works with arguments, default arguments. Pretty wildly awesome. So what we're doing here is we're allowing people to provide their own call to use state. So all that I really need is here. Actually, let me just show you for a second. If I were using my function my toggle, and that'll take props or whatever, then I'm going to say use toggle. There are a couple things I could do. I could just use it like this, and then I can get my on and toggle and whatever else my toggle helpers that I needed. So I could do it like that. If I wanted to control the on state, so maybe I'm getting that from props, I can say on is props dot on, right? So now I'm controlling the on state. And if I wanted to be notified of when that on state, or if I wanted to have my own function called when the on state should change, because this is a controlled prop situation, so I need to know when that's going to change, then I'll pass a set on state, and that'll be props.set on state. Or like maybe I've got my own little magic here, whatever. And so now my set on state is going to, or my toggle, my use toggle hook is going to call this set on state. Okay, that's yeah, that's cool. That's kind of like what I was looking for in the first place. Was this ability for, hey, when I'm controlled, I need to know when I should be updating the on state. I don't have to update the on state, but I need to know when you suggest that I do. So I could use it that way, or I could do my on and my toggle equals use state false. And then I can say on use state is my on and my toggle. Or if like I wanted to be really simple about it, I just on use state and there. And now I have total control. I can call updates for this anytime that I want to, whatever, because I have total control over that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think this is like, I haven't shipped any production hooks code, so take that into account. But I think that as a user of this API, being able to use this on toggle like this, and then if I want to control the on state, then I can provide the on state. And like what does the value of controlling that state give me? Well, it means that all of the utilities that I get back from this use toggler are going to behave with the state on is true, right? So my get toggler props or get input toggler props or get element toggler props, like all these things based off of the different accessibility requirements of each, they will behave with the on state of true or false as I direct. If I don't provide anything, then that state will be managed by this hook by itself, which is what my component had been doing originally. And so I'm basically, through a different means or different implementation in my hook, I'm simulating the same kind of developer experience and feature set as I was with my previous React component, but I'm doing it with hooks now. So Robin is suggesting that this is a little confusing. Maybe I could see how that's confusing. Use toggle is okay, so here's a real toggle component. Use toggle, or a real toggle hook. Initial on, const on, and set on equals use state initial on, and then my toggle equals set on is not on, and then I return on toggle and set on, right? Cool. So that is a toggle hook, but that doesn't allow me to do a whole bunch of other things. So like what this is doing is it also gives me some utility functions I can use to get props that are necessary for common use cases of this toggle component. So if you want to create an input like a checkbox that behaves like a toggler, then you can use this get input toggler props and apply those props to your input. So you here, actually, let me see if I can. I had this thing. You can see an example of what, like, how this component's actually going to be used in reality. Okay, so this is the way that it's. Oh, actually, this is the way that the hook will be used. It doesn't work right here. If I copied things over, it probably would work. But yeah, so we're going to say use toggle. We're going to get all the stuff that we need. One of those is get toggler props, and we're going to say, hey, this button is a toggler. If we wanted to do a checkbox, then we can say get input toggler props, and then we'd say input type checkbox. Actually, I wonder if that, yeah, it doesn't set the type to be a checkbox, so you're on your own there. But yeah, so then you can have this input behave like a toggler, and all the things that that are necessary for that, and the element toggler props. So if you want any other element, it's going to apply this key up so that it handles your key presses properly, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, so anyway, the simple case is actually really simple, but the more advanced case where you can provide a lot of things, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So anyway, Robin mentioned that he was referring to this thing. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit confusing. So here's an alternative. Maybe I should have shown the alternative first. So we can say rest. We'll just call it rest. Come on. We'll pull these out. We'll say const on use state is rest dot on use state or use state. The on is going to be const on use state of 0 and on set. Yeah, that would work. If you wanted to do it that way, feel free. Yeah, that would work fine. Actually, it doesn't quite work because we're going to say we'd have to do type of rest.on is undefined. Then we'll do that. Otherwise, it'd be rest.on. And this is why we use type of rest dot, what did I call it? Set on state. Undefined. Otherwise, rest set on state. Yeah. So we could do it that way if we wanted to. Yeah, not permitted, blah. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, nah, let's just learn how cool default parameters are, or default values on an object are, and then it's a lot simpler. Okay, sweet. Let me just check out what other people are suggesting. Most of the complexity is located at function signature, so I don't think it's bad. It allows maximum flexibility. I agree. I think it's great. Provide different hooks for different use cases. Use input toggler. Yeah, you could do that. So here we could say function, use input toggler, and options. And we'd say const utils equals use toggle with options. And then we'd put our get input props here, and that'd just be utils dot and utils dot. Then we'd return utils and get input toggler props. Whoops. So yeah, we could do it that way and split all those out. That might be kind of nice because you could tree shake the things that you're not using, and you don't allocate memory space for all of these extra things. So yeah, totally. I would suggest doing that. Okay, I've got to get going, but let me talk about a couple last things before I go. So toggle changes the on state. Let's see what's going on here. So you'll notice actually this is using enzyme. This was before React testing library existed. I should change it, but that is not what's causing the problem here. So toggle changes the on state. Let's look at what this is doing. So we've got this setup function down here because all these are the same. This is how I test render prop components. It accepts children. We default that just to a div. We can default it to render null. Doesn't matter. And then the rest of the props. And then we create a child spy that takes the controller arg, so all of the toggle state and helpers, and sets the render arg to the controller arg, and then the children is called so that it renders null or whatever we want it to render based off of that. And then we spread the render arg with the child spy in the wrapper. And so presumably this is going to have all of those, all of those functions. Here, hold on one second. I will be right back. I think somebody's here. I need to talk to them really quick. This will just be a sec. Yeah, somebody's here, so I got to finish up quick. So what's going on here is before we had this toggle component where it had an instance method called toggle, and that instance method stayed the same for the life of the toggle component. And so when we, and this all happens synchronously, so this is going to be called before this line runs because we're mounting, it'll render, and then we return all that stuff. So for the entire life of this component, the values in this render arg object were the same. That toggle function never changed. And that is sort of true in our new world where here we're using toggle. We create this toggle function, and then we return that as part of this get toggle state and helpers. Is that the only place it's used? Okay, let's rewrite this. Get rid of that function and just return it. A lot easier. Yeah, so we get to this point, we return this toggle function, but on the next render, so when we re-rendered now, this toggle function is going to be a totally new function. And this on value is also going to be a totally new variable. And so what we've done here, this is a really important point. So if you don't get this, like rewind and watch it again. So what we've done here is we set up once. This is rendered. This function is called once, and we return this object once. And the value in this render arg here is whatever is coming back from that controller arg, which includes the toggle function. But that toggle function is going to be the same forever. It's always going to have access to that same on variable. So the next time this render happens, this function will be called again, and render arg will be reassigned to the controller arg, which has our new toggle function. However, this object here is not going to be re-returned in the future, right? So this is happening at another point in time. And so this render arg will, while the render arg itself will have on toggle updated, the object that we created at this point in time will not have that updated value. This is wild and maybe a little hard to understand, but maybe it'll make a little bit more sense when I solve this problem. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to make this thing called toggle utils object, or well, it'll just be this object. And then in here, I'm going to say object, or the toggle util, or yeah, sorry, object.assign onto toggle utils the value of the controller arg. And then we can return that. And then here I'm going to return object.assign toggle utils, the child spy and the wrapper. And so now we're going to have one object, but it's going to have assigned to it all of the values that it needs. So that does not actually solve our problem yet, because what's happening here where we're testing things is, where is that test that is breaking? Right here. So we're destructuring the first object. So we're plucking off the values. So while this object itself, utils, that object will never get a new reference. We'll never need a new reference to this utils object. But if we pluck off toggle at this point, utils.toggle, goodness gracious, I hate when VS Code auto imports stuff for me. I need to turn that off. Utils dot toggle, or our toggle utils dot toggle, that will be changed as our component is re-rendered. But plucking off utils dot toggle, calling that toggle, and then calling this, that's always going to point to the function that toggle utils had at that point in time. And so if we do things this way, here we'll do toggle utils, and then we'll toggle utils child spy for those. So if we do things this way, this toggle function is not always gonna, it's not gonna follow the reference to toggle utils.toggle. It's going to say, okay, I'm gonna grab that function at this point in time, and that is always gonna be the function that it's referencing. So to solve the problem, we're gonna go here and use the toggle utils reference, which will always stay the same, and then call the .toggle property, which will be changing as we're making calls. This is kind of confusing, and actually this is probably going to trip people up. I'm trying to think of good ways to teach this, as well as to maybe make utilities that makes this a little bit easier, or yeah, something. Maybe we'll have like a render prop tester or something, because I think this will mostly just be a problem with render prop based components. Yeah, and I guess custom hooks in general will probably be a problem here. Yeah, because this is a little bit on the confusing side. But it, like, once you understand what's going on, then it kind of makes sense. It's really like, it's just JavaScript. There's nothing specific about React here. It's just JavaScript and object references and things. So this is a little unfortunate, but my expectation is this problem won't crop up a whole lot, so we'll see. I do have to get going, but let me just wrap up by saying that these 3 tests right here, which handled or were handled by our component will receive props. This basically said if the props changed, if the onState from props is different and the onState from state is different, then we should update our internal mechanism of the state. This problem is actually solved by our new API, and that actual that feature is not a good one originally. So if I end up publishing this as the new React toggled, I will remove this feature and these tests because I don't think that it's a good feature. I don't have time really to explain why exactly, but yeah, so I'm just going to remove those tests because it's not a good feature anyway. To support, it is possible to support this in hooks, but yeah, I'm not going to bother with it. So anyway, I hope that was interesting and helpful. I got to run upstairs and help with somebody. Yeah, but that's fun. And I will actually, I actually already pushed this, my changes to a branch. Let's do this, except I'm going to take off the expand. We can compare. And I will paste that to you and you can look at the diff. It is kind of interesting what we did here. I hope it's interesting to you. I think it's pretty remarkable that we were able to make almost all of the tests pass with very minimal changes to the tests. And in fact, the regular users of our API will probably not run into the object reference problem. Hopefully they wouldn't. And so yeah, it's that I'm not concerned about that. The feature that we removed, I think it led to bad code, so I'm not worried about that either. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with our new implementation here. I think it's overall it's a better implementation. It's also quite a bit shorter, so that's always nice. And it supports the old API as well. All right, I gotta jump out. I hope that was interesting, and I will see you all later. Yeah, bye. I clicked on the wrong thing. I'm gonna click on the dev tips thing. Bye.